the daily Bible reading going on. And so on Sunday mornings, we read about 5 chapters a week. And on Sunday mornings, we review them pretty quickly, just to kind of review over what we did. And then we'll start our regular class. So it's pretty simple, won't take but a few minutes. Starting in Mark chapter 10 and going through, I think, 14. The thing about Mark is we're talking about mostly the power that Jesus displayed. This time we're switching gears. The power that he displayed was not all in miracles. This time, a lot of this power that he's going to display is all in his teaching. And it's really going to mess up some of the guys that are trying to trick him. They keep trying to trick him, trying to find something wrong. And he continuously evades them and teaches them something astounding that leaves them speechless and can't do anything about it. And it gets to where they don't really want to ask him any questions anymore. So it's kind of a fun reading that we had. Just going to go through 10. He doesn't quit teaching on marriage and divorce. He talks about children and where we stand with them. We talk about the rich young ruler and the question that he asked and the things that Jesus taught him. He gives a little hint about what's going to happen next few days. We're getting pretty close to his when he's going to be crucified. And that's why there's a whole lot of information in this different chapter. Like, he does like 60 verses or so, and then puts little, just little bam. Tries to get everything done he can before he dies. Then we got a quick request about John and James. Somebody wants to mention some of that, and then we got one healing in there. So this is all in just chapter 10. So what I'd like for you to do is for one person to tell me something that stood out with them with this, while they were reading, they had this thought that, it just really hit them and made them think about something. So if anybody got anything within that chapter that did that, like, wow, that was something. Anybody think of anything? All right?
I kind of figured you might ask that. 29 to me is key. He's talking about the sacrifice that a Christian has to make. We compare that to first, what is it? My mind's going. Romans 12.
Okay.
We're putting our lives on the sacrifice. He says that if you're not willing to leave father or mother, or sister or brother and confess me, you're not worthy of me.
Exactly. If everybody was listening, we were talking about the sacrifice that we made, the leaving the father and mother, doing that kind of thing. One thing that Jesus does not like is, or one thing God does not like is waiting. He always says, go. And he never says, okay, now wait till you're this way. He always says, go. Go do what you can and that kind of thing. So that made me think about that as he said that. Okay, we'll move to chapter 11. We have the triumphant entrance coming in. As he's going in, he curses a fig tree. We have the cleansing of the temple, which is pretty exciting. So those are the three things. Anything come out in anybody's mind as this is going on? Any of these things, triumphant of the temple. If not, I'll be a little bit more specific.
I love about what he asks them the question. This shows the brilliance of Jesus. He is God after all.
Yeah.
The fact that he says, was the baptism of John?
Right.
Was it of men?
Yeah.
Or was it
He gets
of
in.
God?
Now, what chapter is that in?
It's 11.
Okay, there
It's
is
11 verse.
Okay, I didn't get that down on my notes.
It's 30,
Verse
29 and 30.
Gotcha.
But I
You
think
bring up
it's-
stuff I'm not talking about right now. I want you to quit doing that.
Oh,
No,
yes.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Sorry. I just thought it's
I
amazing.
didn't have mine. I'm like,
It just shows that he is God.
yeah,
To come up with a question like that, doesn't even know what they're going to talk about.
And they didn't know how to answer that one.
No.
Because they're going to be in trouble either way. Double jeopardy. What was he writing when he came into the temple? Came back to Jerusalem? A what?
The colt of a donkey.
Yeah, the one, yeah. One on a horse, one on a big white horse.
Magnificent stallion.
Say what?
Fit for a king.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Fulfilled prophecy.
fulfill prophecy. That's one thing that Mark doesn't did a whole lot. I think the whole time I was reading, it said fulfill prophecy one time, and it wouldn't on this occasion. Going further back, and I'm doing this by memory, so y'all check me out on this, but I don't think they were really, from the beginning, when all this started, supposed to buy horses, especially from Egypt. I was supposed to buy any horses from Egypt, and I was supposed to build chariots and stuff like that. I think the idea was, we're going to be a great country and a great nation, supported by God, not supported by the things that we can make, the army tanks, the things that we can make. Yes.
Well, another thing to think about is he wanted to exalt the humble. He didn't want to start with the proud. The proud that's what they had. They had all the nice things, and he wanted to come in with the humble and make the proud foolish.
Right. Exactly.
I was thinking about the contrast between the Roman Empire.
I'm
The
sorry.
Roman Empire, can you imagine, how someone from Rome would have ridden in there with a, chariot and all sorts of shiny horses and all of the flags and everything that they would have had, from what we could see in like movies and history books and things like that, but what a contrast. If Jesus had come in with that type of a procession, what image, they already had that image in their mind of Rome.
Right.
So it's a real contrast, and he didn't come in that way,
Right.
but he is seeking.
Right. Very good. Very good. Yes.
On the cleansing of the temple, he had, in the book of John, it records that he did that early on in his ministry.
Right.
When he got started making himself known, one of the things he did at first was to go to the temple and run out all the money changers and all this stuff. And here it's turned back into the same thing that he tried to stop to begin with.
Right. Very good. Okay. There's the temple. That's right. Fig tree. Okay. Chapter 12 was the parable of attendance. This was done very well. This is about the sending people. This guy sets up this thing, puts people over it. He sends people to collect his share of it, and they are doing mean things to him. Paying taxes to Caesar, and the questions that they begin. It's funny, questions about the resurrection. So there's a really funny thing about that, being your question, the resurrection. So let's just start with that. What is the strange thing about these particular men asking about the resurrection?
They were Sadducees and they don't believe in the resurrection.
They're Sadducees, they don't believe in resurrection. And yet this is not the only time they do it, there's other times they do it too. And he's later on going to straighten that out. So that was just a funny thing that the Sadducees, they don't even believe in it, they don't ask about it. So it's kind of funny. Great answer on the taxes, who render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and to God what is God, in the parable of the tenants. I think Matthew brings out a little bit more of that particular parable, if I remember. I see the Matthew or Luke. And the funny thing about that parable to me is Jesus actually, in a way, gave them an opportunity here to decide their fate. He asked them, he said, what is the man, what's the owner going to do, to these men? And they say, oh, he's going to come in and destroy them. And it's like, that's the same thing that's going to happen to you. And so it would have been interesting to see he'd been more forgiving if they'd answered something different. So just interesting. The greatest commandment. What is the greatest commandment? I'm trying not to take too much of your time. Go on.
Oh, it's okay. You got good go.
Greatest commandment, yes.
So Jesus, he answered it, and the scribe, his response was saying, yes, that's absolutely true. And he's saying it's much more than burnt offerings and sacrifices. And Jesus' response to the scribe was, you're not far from the kingdom.
That was very interesting.
And it just goes to show that the scribe, he was trying to learn more about the kingdom. He was trying to learn how to get to the heart of following God.
And he did. If y'all didn't hear that, he was talking about the scribe that he answered, and he told the scribe, "You're not far from being from the kingdom." So you're getting pretty close. You're beginning to understand things. First commandment: love God with all those things: the heart, the mind, the soul, the strength, all that, which covers everything. I mean, if you love God, you're going to keep His commandments. If you love God, you're going to do your proper sacrifices. You know, I mean, it just covers everything. I mean, what man that loves his wife that way don't know what color eyes she got, what she likes, what she don't like, how to make her angry, how not to make her angry. You know, if you love somebody like that, then God's the same way. We need to know everything that He likes and what He doesn't like. And if you love Him this way, you're going to find all that stuff out. You're going to do it without wondering, oh, do I really have to do that? Oh, come on, you know, isn't that going too far? Yeah, we asked your wife. Let's see, the word offering, her putting in the 2 small mites is also in there. 13, they're going to talk about destruction of the temple. They're going to, and then the signs of the ends. That gets a little too deep. I'm glad Dwayne walked out right now. We don't have to talk about this. Oh, there he is. I forgot, he's right over there.
It's a nice
I'm not
story.
probably here all day going.
It's hard, yeah, you know it's my
No,
favorite.
it's really good reading and really interesting stuff. Abomination and desolation, the times that he says tribulations and he's warning, talk about the coming of man. And then he goes back to the fig tree that he condemned. Anything interesting? Go ahead, Dwayne, you go for it. I don't really know.
You know, the only thing I had was,
Okay.
I studied it pretty extensively and compared it to Matthew 24.
Right.
You know, there's 3 instances there, and it looks to me like there's only the first, you know, in Matthew 24, there's 2 questions.
Right.
The
yes.
question about the end,
You only
the end
got
of
one.
time, you know. But
Yeah.
that seems to be absent here, and everything that's discussed in that particular chapter is dealing with question number 1,
Yeah, because he actually ends it by saying, you're going to see these things happen.
right?
So that's kind of the key to, that actually stopped there. That's a good point. I'm glad you're here. I just
Yeah,
missed it.
thank you. I know you did.
Okay, and then chapter 14, they start to plot to kill Jesus. They do the Last Supper, and they go into the garden. This is when all these things are going to happen. How many times do the apostles fall asleep? Peter, James, John, they enter.
3 times.
Yeah, 3 times they fall asleep. And then talk about the arrest, and then they talk about a little bit of time before the Sanhedrin. They take them in before the Sanhedrin, some things that happen there, and then it talks about Peter's denial. Now, what is strange about Peter's denying? What happened just a short time before he denies Christ 3 times? He does something that's very,
He swore to
Yeah.
Jesus that he would never be,
Yeah.
never deny him.
yeah, but then there's something else.
He jumped up to defend Jesus physically defend Jesus when he was
Yeah.
arrested.
He draws the sword, he's ready to fight to the end.
Cut me and deer off.
Yeah.
And they're not as descriptive in Mark as they are in others, because the others say when they tell you who it was, then they say Jesus
Get back.
fixed it, yeah.
Yes. The thing that's so overwhelming about this is how much stronger you are when you're close to Jesus than you are when you're away from Jesus. Because he's away from Jesus is when he denies. When he's right beside Jesus, he's ready to fight to the end. So that was one of the biggest things I got. So the other thing, was just the trial, the way that they did the trial, how it was done. I think we had lessons before, just everything that was wrong with the trial and everything, so illegal. You're not supposed to have it at night. You're supposed to have everybody there. You're supposed, your witnesses are supposed to be, all together, just things like that. Nothing in the trial was right, so that was the other thing that stood out. All right, we'll pick up next week. It's all yours. I love picking on you.
There's a lot of material there.
Yeah.
button's on. Can everybody hear me okay? Hello?
There we go.
All right, before we start, I've got a public service announcement. The new quarter starts July the 5th. We've got new teachers, new books, everything's going in. If you've got a high schooler, they're going to be studying apologetics. I went in and handed some of the books out, but if your high schooler didn't get one, let me know, and we'll take care of that. Chris and Chuck are going to be teaching apologetics in a high school class, which to me is an amazing faith builder. When we study that, we've got two very capable guys going to be doing it because it is a tough subject to teach on, because there's a lot of research that has to be done associated. And this book is good because it's a good intro to apologetics and all of the areas that we can look to gather our faith. I found it to be a very good one, but it's just a primer, just to start with. And those guys will be going through the New Testament, the Old Testament, and showing examples of where those things are, just all of the different levels of textual criticism, all that stuff, which is going to be a great study for them as well as for the kids. In the adult class, we've got the books up front for July 5th. I'll start teaching 4 classes, and then Marty's going to do 4. Marty and I are going to swap back and forth. But we study authority about every 3 years, and it's super important to do. I believe that one of the things that keeps this church so stable and keeps us peaceful is because we study this book on a regular basis. We ensure as elders that you understand, how do we arrive at decisions? How does that happen? What's the method for doing that? And I think this guy does such a good job of walking us through 26 lessons. Now, I admit, there are places where it gets a little dry, but be sure you do your lessons, because it's super important to understand where your eldership is coming from, why we do what we do, and why we reject things that we reject. Very, very important. And that keeps peace. And I've always said, the more we study the Scripture, the more everybody studies the Scriptures, the devil won't be able to get in here and get at us, because we will understand that our goal is just like Josiah. Remember, we were studying Josiah. What was one of the key things about him? Before he instituted that, they had lost the book, right? But what did he do when he went in to look for the Passover? That Passover that was so good that hadn't been done since Solomon. What did he do? He went back to the book, and he read it, and he understood what he had to do, which is what we should do every time there's a decision that has to be made. Go back to the book and see what they did. Don't add anything. Don't subtract anything. Understand that silence of the Scriptures does not authorize. Does not authorize. We have to find what we do in the book. Okay. So I'm looking forward to it. We're going to do 26 lessons on authority. That'll be the whole, that'll be July, August, and September. So the books are up here. You get a head start if you want on it. It'd be a good idea. All right, now we're going to take a look at Barnabas, son of encouragement. And there was something I wanted to say before we even started. It kind of had to do with Barnabas' character. Turn with me to Philippians chapter 3, verse 17. And we're going to read about a concept that I often think about in my life. People that have been examples for me, that I look back on, and I'll read it to you, Philippians 3. And Paul says this to the brethren at Philippi. Brethren, be followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as ye have us for an example. So what he's basically doing is saying, who's the ultimate person that walked on the earth that we are to follow?
Jesus.
Absolutely, it's Jesus. But there's nothing wrong. This verse we can use this verse to say, hey, Jesus is our ultimate example, but But there are people out there. Each of us know, you guys can all shake your head, yes, you know, there's examples of people that you look to, that you say, hey, when I reach that portion in life, or the next portion in life, or whatever, this person is really trying to do God's will, and you follow them. It's really, really important that we understand that having an earthly example is not sin, it's not wrong. Yeah, we're following Jesus, he's our ultimate, no one's ever over Jesus, but there are people that, that we want to follow, because we can see that they're on their way, they're on the path. We've compared their lives to the Bible, right? That's the ultimate standard. We don't compare it to anything else. Oh, they're very kind, or they're very, whatever this is. I mean, we are going to, the models that we pick will be ones that are walking according to what we read in the New Testament. Questions? I think it's a really important point. I think it's important to teach our children, too. Of course, we hope our children follow our lead as well. First Jesus, then the parents, then other Christians. But, I get kind of emotional when I think about people that, stood out, for me. Les and Betty would be one, for those of you that have been with us a long time. Their example, Milton and Arlie Roberts, we used to pick them up and bring them to church. Huge examples, that impacted who I could see daily, saw them about 3 times a week when we brought them to church. And we did a lot of things for them because they were older. And, and at each step, somebody does it. So we have to be careful, don't we? Because we don't really know who's watching us out there. And the things that we do can greatly impact people that are in that position. So, it's, I know this seems like Christianity 101. Irregardless, though, we do it, and we know we do it. We looked for that earthly example, and we watched them. So we get some information about, this is on page 59. We get some examples of Barnabas, where he was from, things that he did. But the thing that stood out the most was when they needed a man to go north, to preach to the Gentiles in Antioch. Who did the Jerusalem church choose? Barnabas. 3,000 souls had just been saved, at Antioch, and the church was growing exponentially. God was behind it. The power of the Holy Spirit was there to demonstrate miracles, to demonstrate all the things that were necessary to back up what was being said. And the church just took off growing. And Barnabas, a man from Cyprus, was chosen to go north and to teach the Gentiles. And he did. The book talks about that he was a very caring person. And how the apostles changed his name from Joseph to Barnabas. Now, I didn't know that. Each time you study the Bible, you pick something new up. I didn't realize that his name was not Barnabas. It was Joseph, and the apostles gave him the name Barnabas. So what did that mean? You remember? What did Barnabas mean? Son of consolation. Which, that's King James's. What is the...
Encouragement.
Encouragement, right. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so the son of encouragement meant that there was a lot of things about him that encouraged people around him. What might some of those have been from the scriptures that we studied?
He cared about people.
He did. That's exactly right. He cared about people. He was very concerned.
When we were first introduced to him, he had taken a tract of land and sold it and laid it at the apostles' feet to help meet the needs of those who were staying in Jerusalem and were needy. That
really says something, doesn't it? That he was willing to sell land to help these people. I mean, this sounds like a guy that's all in, doesn't it?
Instead of the couple that held back some proceeds.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're told about that in the very next chapter, aren't we? So he was a man that loved Jesus, that could see what, he probably studied the old law, he knew about Jeremiah and the new law that was coming in, that was supposed to be ushered in, he had read the prophecies about the Messiah, he understood. He was that good ground in which the word touched him, and off he went to the races, which is, we see that in a lot of people in the New Testament when we study. I love studying Acts because it causes you to sit there and think about what would it have been like to be sitting there in Jerusalem when this really new, radically new thing is presented. Even though there was prophecy, even though there was miracles, you were going against some pretty strong tides, weren't you? You were going against the Jews, who had all kinds of divisions. You were going against the Romans. They had 3 or 4 different types of worship. You had Greek, ideas that were in there. And all of a sudden, you're following this persecuted Messiah, one that had been crucified in shame. And all of a sudden, you're following him. But he understood. He was that right ground. He understood exactly what was at stake and how important it was. And he could see around him how fast it was growing. And he could also see the miracles that were occurring. So he cared about people. He was devoted. He traveled when it was needed. He went up to teach the Gentiles. And there was something about him that they named him the Son of Consolation. Because he cared about people, because he was willing to sell his land, there must have been something a little more too. He must have had a tremendous speaking ability. Because remember when Paul and Barnabas came together and they taught on one of the missionary journeys, and after they healed somebody, they named Paul, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they named Paul Mercurius, wasn't it? And they named Barnabas, the guy that's the head of all the gods. Who was it? Zeus, thank you. Yeah. My brain was going blank. They named him Zeus. I would have thought it would have been the other way, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That tells us a little something about Barnabas. Barnabas was a guy that could communicate and really, really cause people to understand what was going on.
And also, when everybody was, cynical about the transformation, Saul and Paul, Barnabas wasn't scared to say, hey, let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody else, they were scared of him. They didn't want nothing to do with him. Barnabas was like, hey, you want to preach, let's go. Wow,
that's right. We're going to talk a little bit further about that. Because that kind of thinking impacts us, doesn't it? So you go back to his preaching too. If he was a son of encouragement, he was able to take people that were kind of on the edge, that were struggling. Mossy.
Yeah, one thing I want to say, we have to remember, if God is for you, who can be against you? If he's helping you, and he wants his will to be done, his will be done.
Mm-hmm. And he had to know, though. He had to know. I'm assuming this was after Stephen. Stephen happened pretty early on, his stoning. Even not, he could see that persecution started right away. The Jews were all over it. So to make this decision, he had to have realized it was going to be, his life was going to be turned upside down, and he didn't care. And because of what Mossy just said, that's right. He had courage. He took courage to choose the right thing. And so he's an example to us. And these are all the things that we're saying are characteristics that we want to have, Christian.
Well, I'm just thinking about in Acts chapter 11, when the church of Jerusalem heard about the church at Antioch and large numbers of people believing and turning to the Lord, they looked and saw, hey, here's this church that's starting out. Who should we send? And they sent Barnabas because he had proven himself as that encourager when Jerusalem was first started. He'd been through the growing pains of Jerusalem, and they sent him to Antioch. And what he does is, when he gets there, verse 23 of chapter 11, when he arrives and witnesses the grace of God, he rejoiced and began to encourage them with all resolute heart to remain true to the Lord. For he was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith. The Church of Jerusalem, one, recognized how important it is to encourage a church that's just starting out. And so they sent the very best man for the job. And when he gets there, he's seeing all the great things that are happening, and he's encouraging them. But then he also turns around and he goes, I need help. And so he goes in search of Paul to grab him and bring him back. And they spend a full year, and the work that Paul and Barnabas do together in Antioch was so astounding and helped them grow so much. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the very next line in verse 26 is that the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch because of the influence of Barnabas and Paul in helping and encouraging people to follow Christ.
Yeah, it's amazing, they stayed a whole year in it. That's Acts 11, isn't it?
Yes.
Acts 11, yeah. Yeah, that's a good read as you go through it. It's kind of a must read for this lesson. They stayed there a whole year and taught. Yeah, it's fascinating to kind of put yourself, read those little snippets that we get, and think about what was going on when they hit the ground in Antioch. We know Antioch became ground zero for, this is Antioch of Syria. There's an Antioch of Pisidia, but Antioch of Syria became ground zero for what?
Paul's journeys.
Yeah, the journeys, that's right, and for evangelizing the Gentiles. Remember, that's where the Jerusalem conference, was initiated because of Judaizing teachers going to Antioch to try to bust up ground zero. I think there's no mistake why they went to Antioch first.
And another thing too is like when, in the Gospels where Jesus sent them out 2 by 2, same goes with this, Barnabas, it says Barnabas was equipped with a rare but important quality that he was balanced and he knew when to build up the other person. If the other person's having problems, he wouldn't tear them down even further. He just stoop down and raise them up, bring them up instead of try to edify instead of tear down.
Yeah, and another thing about the lesson, that's right. If this thing was written by man, we would never get to see warts and all. We get to see one wart in Barnabas. You remember what it was? I'm forgetting what it was, so I hope somebody remembers. I had it in my mind and I forgot it, but.
He and Paul separated later on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he and Paul separated, that's right. And Peter's hypocrisy, right. Yeah, I was actually thinking about Peter's hypocrisy because, Chris, tell us what was that again?
Peter feared the Jews and would withdraw from the Gentiles and glean from them, and it became so bad that even Barnabas was caught up in it.
Yeah. Right? I mean, isn't that amazing? We get a chance to see that he's no different than us. Barnabas, and that's just one of the things. We've got all these inadequacies. I feel like I do, and then to find out Barnabas, above all though, he was a servant of God. He endured the crisis, any crisis of faith that he had. And he encouraged other people. He was super, super concerned. Even though he had he's no special person that we can't achieve the same level as him. Sometimes we read these characters and we think, I could never be like Abraham, or I could never be like Moses, or I could never be like, Barnabas or Paul. But they all are shown to us by the Holy Spirit that they are flawed individuals just like us. And when we disappoint ourselves and when we disappoint others, we go back to these kind of things and we say, you know what? I can go forward from this mass embarrassment or whatever I did, I can move forward with that. And it's an encouragement for us, I think. And then Chuck talked about, a little bit about when he wouldn't forgive. Paul wouldn't forgive Mark. Paul's another one, okay? Paul, we look at him and say, I could never be like the Apostle Paul. That guy was so staunch in the doctrine and sacrificing and doing all that. I could never be like him. But yet we're shown an example. John Mark just left him. Was it in Pisidia? I think was it number one? Trip number one? Yeah, it was in Pisidia. Trip number one, he took a boat back and left him right in the middle of journey number one. And Paul wasn't forgiving him for that. And of course, Barnabas was related to John Mark. So he had a little special feeling for him, I'm sure. They were cousins, I think, is what if I remember. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong. But, so he had a little bit of a family thing there too, which that caught throw some stuff into. So he was going to take him. And you know what? Barnabas was right, wasn't he? How do we know he was right?
Well, it says that Paul realized later and took him on
Yeah.
did other things with him after that.
Yeah. When he's in 2 Timothy, when he's in depths of despair, 2 Timothy is where we find out Paul's a goner.
Well, that's, in a way, is how we know that they really were Christians, because every once in a while, we fuss and fight with each other.
Oh,
We
yeah.
need to learn how to get over it
Yeah.
and move on for the sake of Christ.
That's right. Imagine that, Christians actually getting into arguments that make them upset. We never do that here, right? That never happens. So we look to these people to realize, hey, let's study this out. Let's forgive one another. Let's do all those things and move on. And we do that here, We feel passionate about our position, and those things come out. But at the end of the day, we're all we got, and that's what he understood. That's what Paul came to understand about John Mark, is he needed him. And at the end of Paul's life, he was saying, he has been very useful for me, I think is what it says. Send John Mark, he has been very useful. I think I got the right guy. Towards the end of 2 Timothy. Any other comments? We did kind of a quick overview. I don't want to steal all the questions from Marty, so I'm going to leave the questions alone. We're going to kind of go through again each one of these items, kind of dig a little deeper into one. And there is one, it's still on page 59. We talked a little bit about it, but I think there's more we need to glean as a group. There's some things coming up that you may not, that have actually been announced yet, that some things that will challenge us a little bit, I do believe. It says, he believed in giving a man a second chance. We talked about that, right? We talked about giving a man a second chance. And that's really important. And all of us would shake our heads, yes, we would do that. But if you think about it, and you think about what he's saying there. John Mark left him. He was unreliable, and that's all, okay? And he gave him a second chance. Is there situations that we might have? We're going to be doing some outreach stuff. That'll be announced later, and exactly how we're doing it, and the people that are helping do it. And you know what? This class, the adult class, is going to change. We're going to have people in here that are going to stand up and say stuff, and you're going to say, whoa, where'd that come from, And that's going to be because that's what occurs whenever you go out into the community and you begin to do what you were supposed to do, which is bring people in. I remember when I was still working out in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I had a thing out there. I'd go there sometimes over the weekend, have to be there. And I'd go to church in Gettysburg. A guy by the name of Smeltzer is the preacher out there. What's his first name? Scott. Yeah, I was really impressed with this guy. I was really impressed with that church. They send all the kids off to class, and then they'd have a thing. It was an open forum where people that were new converts could come up and bare their souls about struggles that they were dealing with. And some of the stuff I heard was craziness, you know? But they were new converts. They were people that had come to Christ that had some real issues. And I don't know, I probably was there about 5 or 6 weeks at different times. And so anyways, and that's what they were doing, the same kind of thing that we're going to be doing. We're going to be going out and beating the bushes and bringing people into this, you know, into this body, okay, into the adult class. And they're going to be saying some things, and it'll be up to us to be very comforting to them, because they're getting a second chance. They're getting a chance to listen to the word. Heretofore they've rejected it, but now they've come into our midst. And so what will we do when somebody jumps up and says, well, baptism is not essential for salvation. I don't know where in the world you guys get this. Works is, we need to think about how we would, as individuals, then rebut that kindly, you know. Now, I know we won't have a problem here, because I know all of you, and I know you're great Bible students, and you won't have any problem with that. But get ready, okay, because it's going to happen. And so giving a second chance is really important. Another thing we got to talk about is, if we bring somebody in here, we think all sins are the same. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what's going on. Don't worry, I'm not bringing it up. You know, why are you looking at me like that? Yeah, all sins are the same. We know that, right? Does everybody agree that? They are all the same. But some sins elicit different reactions for us. What would we do if somebody comes into our midst, you know, that has committed a sin, possibly, that's beyond what we would, how would we handle that? Would we be willing to give a second chance to that person? I'm not going to go into detail about anything like that, but I want you to take your minds to that place. Go to that sin that you would have a hard time sitting next to a person that had done that sin, okay, or knowing that that person is just sitting right here in our auditorium. And think about that. Does that person not deserve a second chance? Do they not deserve to be in this body and to be with us? I don't know. I'm just using that as a when I read this, I thought, wait a minute, that's going to be an issue at some point. We need to think about that. Yeah.
We all deserve a second chance, and we don't deserve, I mean, we're all lucky that God is merciful to give us more than a second chance.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, it don't matter what sin you've committed, is have you quit doing that sin.
Right.
If you quit doing that sin, then, and you put Christ at the center of your life, we're not to judge that person.
No. No, I'm saying we need to be wise. We're not going to bring somebody into our midst to know that they, you know, did these sins and not keep our eye on them. Yeah. But we're going to love that brother or sister, and we're going to try to figure out how to help them and be the son of consolation, right, to them. We're going to try to do that because that's what we do. We're all pretty strong Christians. I'm looking out over the group right now, and we can handle this when it happens.
And the Lord tells you to bless your enemies. He don't tell you to, you know, like you watch these cowboy films and they say, oh, it's an eye for an eye. Well, now that changed.
Yeah, man.
You know, it used to be that way in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, if they 1800,